Alright, hello everyone, my name is Shep, welcome back to the Butcher Circus. Today, we are still stuck in the offline Butcher Circus. It has been 4 days and we still don't have a connection, so that's quite sad, but there has been a tweet and the developers are working on getting a fix going for the Butcher Circus, so they tried to update their drivers or something, I don't know, and it just oofed the circus for some bizarre reason. Yeah, it appears that they are working on it and they are going to fix it, which is quite good. And in the meanwhile, today we are going to be looking at a few things. So we're going to be looking at F tier trinkets and how you can change them. So I have made a tier list like ages ago for the trinkets with the help of Winter Bliss, a good friend of mine. And there are some trinkets that we did put in the F tier. There's also some trinkets that we put in like C minus or just C tier. Let me have a look. We did put, I think it's C tier. Yeah, I think we put them at C tier. We had a little bit of a weird way of rating them. We had F tier, C tier, and then there's B minus and B plus. Basically, everything that's B plus is already pretty good. And then there's A, and then there's S and S plus. So of course, S is going to be things like the Writ of Execution, and A is going to be things like, I guess, the Pit Fighter's Helm and the Carnival Mask, and the Brass Knuckles. Yeah, so I think that these are still very much up to date. I still agree with most of the decisions that I made here. So yeah, today we're going to be looking at the F tier trinkets. So we're going to start off with the Ank of Life. So I have a pretty good idea on how I actually want to fix this trinket, because the way it is right now, even if you buff up the stats by a lot, like just give it a lot of death resistance, just give it a lot of dodge at this store, even then it's still going to be kind of underwhelming, because death resistance is kind of a joke, especially since there's a potential just bounty hunter with finish him and with finisher, and you know, you're just gonna die anyway, even if you have like plus 20% death resistance. It's not too helpful most of the time, and the dodge can be very unreliable, so don't really expect the Ank of Life to save your life if you are playing against a damage team. If you're playing against DOT or Stress, it could help you out a bit more. You might resist what would be a 25%, which just becomes a what is it, a 17% death roll chance, so it is a little bit of a better RNG roll for you, and you do have the dodge too, so it can come in handy. But against damage teams, which is when you'd really want this to work, it just doesn't. So the idea I have for it is, I'm not really too sure how to actually code this or how to actually phrase it, but the way it would work is, if you drop to this store, you get an Aegis block. It only works once, but you drop to this store and you get one Aegis block, and what that essentially means is, against damage teams, which have to use their actions very carefully and very meticulously, they won't be able to get a death roll on you unless they spend another action removing that Aegis block, which is really freaking good, because putting a damage team one action behind because of an Ank of Life can be an absolute lifesaver. I would probably start taking the Ank of Life, for example, on my Abominations. You know, just do this and that, and then the Abomination is actually a whole of a lot safer, because instead of having the net, which sometimes doesn't even work, I will just have the Ank of Life. And of course there's also other defensive trinkets, but something that could potentially save you and give you another action on your characters against the teams that are the strongest, which are the mark ones, would be a really good change, and it would make this trinket go from F tier to probably A tier, if not S tier. It would be quite helpful. Against stress teams and against DOT, it wouldn't change all that much. It would change against DOT, but not against stress, because they're probably just spamming Count's Harry or Beast File anyway, and they're just trying to win through stress, so at least you won't get death load immediately, but overall it's not gonna impact too much. You will still keep the dodge and the death blow resistance, by the way. I don't want to take that away. You have that, and on top you have the Aegis block. So it would be quite a nice change, I believe. So on to the second trinket, and I believe the second one was... actually, which one was it? I did want to talk about the Bleeding Skull, because I think that is another horrible trinket we have to talk about. Also known as the Fool's Idol for the cultist. But the second trinket I wanted to mention was the Sanity's Bane. Yeah, the Sanity's Bane is probably even worse than the Ank of Life, because at least the Ank of Life kind of helps you, potentially, if you're really lucky against damage teams. But the problem with the Sanity's Bane is, this is obviously a trinket made for stress teams. You bring this on the stress character, and when the opponents go afflicted, you're gonna have a death blow chance, stun days, you're gonna have damage and accuracy, which are, you know, decent to have. But the problem with this is that, for starters, your character, instead of having a trinket that could give them stress dealt, is having a trinket that's gonna give them something that will only be useful when they're probably already winning. So that's not too great. And there's also the fact that it won't be useful until like round 3-4, and that's if you have a fast stress team. So it's really not a great trinket for what it's trying to do. And there's also the possibility that your opponent just focuses down the character you use this on, because what characters does Sanity's Bane go well on? Probably something like the Doggy, because of that death blow chance and because of the accuracy, and also the damage, so you wouldn't do 0 damage to characters at the point where they're afflicted, so you could potentially get death blows, but you're trying to win through stress anyway, but let's just ignore that part. It would also work well on the Antiquarian because that death blow chance. You could even pair it with the finisher and you'd have a 75 on everyone that's afflicted, so that would be pretty cool. It also works pretty well on the Crusader because you can bring like Crit of Execution and this, and then you can have really good death blow dealt chance. You can have a lot of damage, a lot of accuracy against afflicted, and also some decent stun chance if you don't want to go for it. But if you want to see that happen, just look at J-Man's channel, look at him trying to play Sanity's Bane Crusader. You'll see that it didn't go too well, because it only becomes useful like rounds 3-4, and the Crusader just gets stunned, pushed around. If your opponent sees this, it's basically like, okay, they're gonna play with one trinket, essentially, because I'm just gonna disrupt that character, or I'm gonna make it so he can't use this. And the way that I actually want to change it is make it more impactful, because these buffs are okay, but they're not changing enough, in my opinion. I want to make it a bit more impactful. It's still gonna be the same kind of philosophy. It's a trinket for stress teams, and I'm gonna make it a bit more impactful when it actually fully activates, and I'm gonna give it a bit of strength before it fully activates. So what I want to do with it is I want to make it have 12 accuracy versus afflicted, so it's more like the finisher. You have a little bit more accuracy than 10, because, you know, 10 isn't a lot, especially compared to 20, like it's half, right? But 12 is already quite a reasonable amount. 12 will make a big impact, so I think that would be good. And I would also like plus 25% damage versus afflicted, because if you want to get death blows, then you have to make sure you're not doing 0 damage, and with plus 15% damage, it's not quite guaranteed. But if you have plus 25% damage on your characters, then even if you get the Fearful Affliction on either the Antiquarian or the Houndmaster, you're still probably going to be able to do damage, so it's going to be quite helpful. It's also going to make Zealots hurt like crazy, so that would be quite good. And on top, I want to give it plus 10% stress dealt, just purely have that there, which definitely helps, and it might not seem like a lot, it might not seem like a huge buff, but with this, I would actually maybe consider taking it, because plus 10% stress still, you know, it's a bit. And when the characters do go afflicted, you have a really crazy, death blow synergy without having to run the finisher. So you have pretty much all the stats you want. You have the accuracy, you have the damage. If you run it on the Doggy, for example, you could even run Blackjack instead of running Hound's Rush. And at the end of the match, if it does go to it, which is very rare, but at the end of the match you could even have a really reliable stun. And I mean really reliable, because it's 125%, and then minus 15% on the enemy resistances, because they're afflicted, right? So it would be quite good. I think Sanity's Bane would go up to probably like a B+ tier trinket, something like that, and it would be actually playable. Now, on to the third trinket. The third trinket I want to approach is the Fool's Idol, also known as the Bleeding Skull. So the thing is, some people actually play this, unlike Sanity's Bane and the Ank of Life. I mean, J-Man plays Sanity's Bane, but he's J-Man, so he gets a pass. People actually play the Fool's Idol. That's why I call it the Fool's Idol, because you'd think it's good, but no, you're a fool if you believe in it. It gives you plus additional HP healed, which is really good for the Stygian Embrace, of course, and also makes sure you don't get 0 HP heals. Also gives you plus 15% max HP, but the debuff it gives, minus death resistance, is permanent. It's just gonna kill your characters. It's honestly, I really hate playing with it, but you know what? I'm not gonna make this trinket Like, I'm not gonna completely rework it, I'm not gonna remove its niche, because I think that it's honestly a fun trinket to play against. And the people that like playing it really like playing it, because they take it every single match on the occultist, and I'm like, well, you're crazy, but if you wanna have fun, then sure, bring this trinket. But because I'm not that much of a sadist, I want to at least make it a little bit more usable for the people that actually bring it. So what I would do is I would give it minus 15% bleed skill chance. So at least, maybe minus 20% bleed skill chance, so at least a cultist is getting like 0 bleeds, because with minus 20 you will have 30%, which is a 15 on actually getting bleed, so it's really unlikely to get a bleed after it. And you know, with the plus HP healed, you can keep your characters alive relatively well. That's kind of the idea behind it, so it's still a bad trinket. I would put it at like C tier, but yeah, it's gonna be a little bit more playable, I will say. So it's overall good for the people that actually like it. I think that's all I'm gonna do with it. I'm not gonna change it entirely because it's a fun trinket. I do actually think it looks cool, being able to just heal that extra 4 HP. Some people quite appreciate that certainty that it gives you that the occultist usually doesn't have. And I also appreciate the certainty of getting easier death blows on my opponents, so there's that. So in terms of the next thing that I want to approach is actually the Bounty Hunter's Trinket. So I want to have a look at the Infamous Visage. So the thing is, what the Infamous Visage does right now is it gives you on melee attack hit, inflict stress plus 15. We have seen Stress Bounty Hunter work before. There was this person called Udik Savant, he played Stress Bounty Hunter quite a bit, went 3-0 with Stress Bounty Hunter in the tournament, by the way, but of course he got quite lucky on the matches, on the matchups, so it was definitely a streak of luck, not a streak of Stress Bounty Hunter being great. And what it actually does is that this plus 15 stress on melee attack hit is definitely quite cool. It makes your punches and your finishes and collect bounties actually do a little bit of stress, which is nice. And what is actually really cool is when the characters are afflicted and you get crits against them, you can make this basically like when you imagine the punish crit going onto a character, they drop to their star and they take like 30 to 40 stress because they're punish crit. The Bounty Hunter can kinda do that with the Infamous Visage, which is really freaking cool because it gets a lot of plus damage and a lot of plus crit. So he can actually hurt quite a lot with this and also do a lot of stress if he does get the crit. So it is definitely a cool trinket. It's not at F tier, it's at C tier. Now the problem I have with it is that you have to be doing melee attack hits, and the trinket is, you know, it's just not great. The playstyle of Stress Bounty Hunter already is problematic because you have to apply caltrops. That's kind of the niche because it has a little bit of plus stress taken, so that like plus extra little bit of stress on every single tick can add up to quite a bit, and then you have almost confirmed death blows with the finisher. We also have some disruption with these two abilities, so that is quite decent. You know, he's far from a terrible character to play as stress. But the biggest problem I have is that he's just not doing a lot of stress. And on the melee attack hit, inflict stress plus 15, it's helpful, but it's only for uppercut and finish him. And oftentimes, you're either not going to be able to use them because you'll be out of position, or the finish him just won't be doing as much as, for example, like any other stress ability, like Panic Darts, Beast Smile. There's just so much better stuff that you could be running than this. So what I actually want to do is I want to make this trinket kind of a very potent early game and a very potent late game. What I want to do with it is on attack hit, inflict stress plus 15. What that would make is that caltrops actually applies 15 stress on every single character right off the bat, which is absolutely crazy, and thank goodness you can only use it once, because extra 15 stress bleed on everyone, like just a super overpowered Houndsary right at the start, is really gonna set things going very well for you, especially considering the just crazy amount of crit chance that caltrops actually has. You usually get at least one crit with it, so it's gonna do some crazy stress. And after it, you're still going to be able to apply the stress on the come hitter, so that's going to be really good, having a pull that actually does 15 stress, so kind of like the occultist demon pull, but instead of applying a lot of horror, you just apply a decent amount of stress immediately. But you can use this from every position, so That's quite unlike the Demon's Pull, so that is quite good for you. So yeah, I think that change would make this trinket go from C tier to probably A tier. Maybe not A tier, but at the very least B+. At the very least B+. You'd actually be seeing a lot of Stress Bounty Hunters, and that would be quite cool, because I do like myself the Stress Bounty Hunter. I think it's a cool character. Alright, on to the next trinket that I did want to review. I believe that's going to be the Antiquarian and her Ghoul Claw. So the Ghoul Claw is definitely cool. It's the stab Antiquarian trinket, and the damage and crit skills it does give you is kind of nutty. You can get some very nice damage rolls, some very nice crits, and the boss time accuracy is actually really good because it works for Festering Vapors as well if you do want to go for that. But if you're running stab Antiquarian, don't go Festering Vapors, go for the stab. But yeah, it applies a little bit of horror, and that's kind of the problem. The horror that it applies just isn't much, and it is good. Like, looking at this from a competitive point of view, not looking at it from a point of view of like, yes, I want to play Stab Antiquarian and have fun. If you actually want to win with this, Stab Antiquarian needs to be not as good as Festering Vapors, definitely not as good, but it needs to be almost comparable, because Nervous Stab has one massive advantage over Festering Vapors, which is the fact that for once you actually do a lot of damage, so that could be very helpful, and you also don't have to worry too much about riposte. You don't have to always hit into a riposte, so that is going to help you out quite a bit. And to make this trinket just a little bit better, I would make it so the horror that it actually does just feels better, because 6 for 3 rounds just means 18 stress, and that honestly just isn't enough. I would make it 8 stress for 3 rounds. That would at the very least buff it up a bit, and I would buff the crit chance from 6% to 8%, and that would make it crit a little bit more than what it does already. And it already crits quite a bit. It has like an 18% crit chance at the moment, so it's like 5 plus 7, 12 plus 6, it goes to 18, and if you give this another 2, it goes up to 20, and if you count command buffs on top, it might go up to like 28 with 2 command buffs, which is going to be kinda crazy. So a little bit of extra horror, a little bit of extra crit, and it's probably gonna go to like B- tier, which is almost viable, which I think is where this trinket really should be. So on to the next trinket. Next one I actually want to do is not actually a trinket, it's a rework on the leper. So this is probably coming out of like a little bit out of nowhere, but it's a very short rework, so I didn't want to dedicate a full video to him because he doesn't really need to have too much happen. It's just some abilities that kind of need a little bit of a change, and some trinkets as well. So if you have a look at these trinkets, we have Invigorating Balm, which sucks. We have Gladiator Mask, which, you know, it's damage and crit, it's good, but it feels a little bit underwhelming. And you have Durable Armlet, which is also a little bit of underwhelming, but it does give you a lot of accuracy and some max HP, which max HP probably not gonna matter, but the accuracy is quite good. And then you have Sharpening Stone, which sucks, absolutely sucks. It gives you 6 crit, which is great, but on the melee attack bleed, it's only 1 point for 3 rounds, and if you compare it to the Shattered Padlock actually gives you 120% bleed chance, because, you know, you're not going to run another bleed trinket to actually make this work, but the Sharpening Stone only gives you 100, so if this isn't Abomination favoritism, I don't know what is. So what I wanted to do is I want to make Sharpening Stone feel a bit more like Shattered Padlock. So I want to give it move skill chance, I want to give it plus 15% move skill chance, and I also want to give it an extra 20% bleed. So with this plus 15% move skill chance, it's gonna make Purge feel a little bit better to take, because at the moment I don't really like taking Purge. I don't feel like running net on the Leper is the smartest idea. But with this, with the extra bleed that you actually apply with the Purge, and with the extra crit that you will get for your other abilities and for the Purge as well, I feel like Sharpening Stone would actually be an okay trinket, and I would probably put it at B+ tier. I think it would be actually quite runnable on the Leper. Not entirely sure what I want to do with Invigorating Balm. It's very difficult trying to balance just the stall trinkets, because this is what it is, it's a stall trinket, so I'll get to that soon. I was thinking about Gladiator's Mask, and honestly, the obvious buff you could give it is plus 10% armor piercing to make it like the Arbel's Piercing Quarrel, but I just thought, man, if you do that, Leper is going to be OP, because if you're on Arbalist and you don't have Piercing Quarrel, you just lose to teams with protection. Like, that just happens. But if you run Leper and you don't have, and you don't have armor piercing, which you never do, you can still kind of win against protection teams. It's a bad matchup for sure, but it's not an unwinnable one. It's not like running exotic snuff on the Arbals, and if you run against like any kind of protection, if there's like a bit of protection in the battle debuff, you're already hitting for less than 2 digits, so it just sucks, absolutely horrible. But the Leper has so much base damage that the armor piercing would just be too much for him, at least that's what I feel, so I don't think I'll actually change the Gladiator's mask. I'm just gonna say what it is. It's a bit of a sorry trinket, but I don't think I can do anything about it. Same thing for the durable armlets, because if I give it more max HP, then he's gonna have way too much. If I give it more accuracy, then it's way too much accuracy, so it's just gonna have to stay where it is. They're okay trinkets, they're definitely runnable on the Leper, and I'm gonna give him some buffs, which is gonna make it so, it looks like I'm being a little bit mean to the Leper, but he's already a king. He's already the king of the Butcher's Circus, so he doesn't need too many buffs, but he's gonna get a little bit of love. And the Sharpening Stone has already gotten a bit of love, and here we are going to give a little bit of love to his other abilities. So the Purge is going to stay the exact same, and the Revenge is going to get a buff and a nerf at the same time. So what I want is for Revenge and Withstand to both move you forward 1. So you can only use them 1 time, but when you use them, it moves you forward 1 position. So even if you get pushed immediately at the start, you can use one of these abilities to move yourself forward. Now, of course, if you get pushed again, you're going to be in position 4, which is terrible. There's that. What I also want to do is I want to make it so Revenge can only be used from positions 1, 2, and 3. I don't think it makes any sense being able to use it in position 4. If you can't use Withstand, then why should you be able to use Revenge? I don't want it to be used. It is definitely a big meme, just seeing a Leper in position 4 going Revenge. It's just kind of killing himself a little bit faster. It's just to get done with this match instead of clicking the white flag, but yeah, I think those 2 little buffs would be quite good. Of course, some people want to make like, I don't know, like one of these abilities just move him forward like a Holy Lance, so that's just ridiculous. Leper, there's no way Leper should have that. He has massive strengths, but he also needs to have massive weaknesses, so that is his weakness, is that once he gets disrupted, he's having a poor time. This will give him a little bit of a way of fighting it. Still not huge though, definitely far from making him immune to disruption, like really far from making him immune to disruption, but it would help quite a bit. Let's keep in mind that most of the time, if you get disrupted immediately, then sure, you can use it, but if your opponent doesn't disrupt you immediately, are you going to be like, do I use Revenge now or do I wait to be disrupted? If I don't use Revenge, my offense sucks, so it would be a little bit difficult to think on what you actually want to do, so the buff can just end up being useless if your opponent plays their actions right. Okay, and the other thing I want to buff is Intimidate. So I actually like Intimidate, I actually like what it does. It has a lot of accuracy, it does more damage than you'd think, and the debuff is crippling. It's definitely crippling. You're supposed to run debuff skill chance on it, and it's just gonna make Arbalists and characters like that deal essentially 0 damage, so that's really good. It also de-stealths, which is another good thing that it has. The only problem is that you are running it on a character that, usually stressed characters are better when they get disrupted when compared to damage teams. If you look at like the Doggy, if you look at the Man-at-Arms, if you look at the Abomination, they're all a lot better than the damage teams. At the damage teams you have the Crusader, which, you can still Holy Lance, but you have Arbalist, which can only bullet, which is still really good, but let's just... You have Bounty Hunter, you have Abomination. Bounty Hunter can't do too much for position 4, Abomination can still transform, so he can still do what he wants. And Damage Abomination is worse than Stress Abomination once he gets disrupted, because you're not really looking to do stress with the Damage Abom, you're looking to do damage, and from position 4 you can't do damage, so that's worse. So it doesn't make any sense that the Leper just needs to be so position locked in 1 to make use of his Intimidate, to make use of his only stress ability. So if you run him and you play against any team that has any sort of disruption, and you get pushed out of, not even the front row, if you get pushed out of position 1, your Leper becomes absolutely useless, and it's levels of useless that no other character can it's levels of use that no other character can compare to. He becomes an absolute piece of just walking standing tall garbage there in the middle of your team that you're just wishing to please go to the front or just disappear. You're disrupting the other characters. I never should have run Stress Leper. It's why I don't really run Stress Leper. I absolutely despise playing him because he just feels like one of the most useless characters. Makes me feel hopeless when I play him, so that's why it's like one of the only challenges I don't do. I'm more fine playing with no healing, playing with what crazy stuff have I done, like playing with only bleeds, playing with only moving abilities, playing with that sort of stuff, than I am playing Strength Sniper, because it's atrocious. But there is a way to fix it. And the way is very simple. Intimidate is just going to be able to be used from position 2 now. And what does that change? It makes it so he still needs to be in the front row to be useful. I don't want to make Intimidate just useful from everywhere. Then you could run like a back row leper, and that'll just be really awkward. We don't want to deviate that much from what the characters should actually do. So I would say use it in position 2 still, and because you actually have withstand, even if you get pushed around, you can use it once to move you back to position, and then even in position 2 you can still use your intimidate, so it won't feel even near as hopeless as it does before. And if you have other characters, like for example a grave robber in position 3 or something, to use your panic darts, if you want to do something like that, you can always just use your move back abilities, and as long as the leper goes back to position 2, he can still be useful. Of course, those teams that do try to run Stress Leper usually bring something kinda like this, or maybe even like, oh god, this is atrocious, yeah. Usually something like this, so you can still use Hugh, but let's be honest, Hugh in a team that looks like maybe kind of like this is just not gonna help you too much, I will say. So yeah, being able to use Intimidate from position 2 is just gonna make the Leopard feel a lot better. I'm not gonna change his stats in any way. I think that it's just going to make Stress Leopard feel a lot better, and it's going to make Damage Leopard feel just a touch better. And it's also going to make Purge feel a little bit better to use, so I think that overall it's great changes. Yeah, good job, Shepherd Doggy. Anyway, hope y'all enjoyed today's video, and hopefully the Butcher Circus is back up tomorrow, because I'll have to admit, I'm feeling kind of down, because there is no Butcher Circus. I've been playing Butcher Circus every day for the past 2.5 years. And now it's gone. And that's just terrible. It's absolutely horrible. And I'm really sad that Red Hook actually allowed this to happen. Like, this is an actual truthful, complete rant, because you know this wouldn't happen for DD2, you know this wouldn't happen for base game, and the fact that it happened to Butcher Circus just goes to prove how much they really don't care about us. At the very least, keep the servers up. So yeah. Anyway, hope you don't mind my vent too much, but that is all for today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again another time. Cheers!